Hello, everybody. This is the webinar for NIBRS code setup. So we are going to be going through and looking at the different things that you can change in ARMS to help you with reporting NIBRS. So this will be for where you can set it up in the setup menu, set up all your codes, and those will be codes that the officers already use. And then whenever you get to the case management side, the stuff that the officers are already putting in, the codes that they're already putting in, this is to help so that everything that they already put in imports into the NIBRS reviews. So just kind of making this whole NIBRS reporting thing a lot easier for you. As a little disclaimer at the beginning, I will say this is going to be covering the FBI NIBRS code setup, which everyone will have to do. But there are some states that have extra codes that they need to set up, and we won't be covering those. If you do have any questions about the extra codes for your state specifically, reach out to us and we can get that information for you. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So this is ARMS Mobile, and we're going to be going through the setup menu in ARMS Mobile. You can do the same thing through the desktop client, but we're just going to be looking at it through mobile. So in the desktop client, you would do the same thing, setup menu, and then the next steps match. But for this one, we're going to go and click on setup right here. All right, and there are two things that are more of stuff that we do at ARMS. So whenever if you don't already have NIBRS, these would be the first two things that we set you up with to be able to report NIBRS. You will be able to do a lot of this NIBRS code setup on your own before even getting NIBRS. So you can do a lot of this just to prepare because you know you're going to be reporting NIBRS. So one of these that you can't do because we have to do it, if we go to system defaults right here, we would have to license you for NIBRS. So if we come over to license, we would just get you a new license key and then license you for the component of NIBRS. If you don't already have that, that means that you don't have NIBRS right now. And then we'd be able to give you that once you have purchased NIBRS. All right, and we'll save that. And the second thing we want to look at is come over back to General, and we'll scroll down to the dictionary synchronization settings, and this is going to make a lot of the code setup easier for you. So this is a big one that will help a lot, and you can do this too before you purchase NIBRS. So if we have dictionaries, the server address, so we would put this in, and this again is normally something that an ARMS person will do, or you can do this and just request the username and password from us. We'll hit the test connection. This is going to be working. Some departments have IT departments that may block this or not let the server reach out to certain websites like this. If that's the case, you may not be able to use this feature, or some departments or IT departments will open up that port just for you to run through this dictionary synchronization. It only takes like 10 minutes. All right, so once you've got that connection, we'll come back to setup, and then you can see down at the bottom the dictionary synchronization. We'll click on that, and I've got most of mine set up. So you'll see that a lot of them say updating is not required, and then there are some that say update is available. The update is not required. We're going to be doing property description for mine. It says it's not required, but I made some modifications on mine to make sure that it is required. Now up at the top, there's 3 up here that aren't related to NIBRS: vehicle color, make, and model. You can run these if you want to. This will match up your vehicle color, make, and model codes to match what NCIC regulates as those codes. But everything below there is needed in NIBRS, and this helps because you do not want to have to put this information in by hand. This will automatically put it in for you and update any codes that are already in that list. So let's do property description for one. We'll choose update. And you'll see the first thing that pops up is any conflicts. So we've got one that has the correct code of 05, but the description doesn't match. Description should be buses, but I've got buses because I purposefully spelled it wrong. So you can keep the duplicate. I don't want to do that because I want the one that's spelled right. So we'll hit save. And then this will bring up our second portion of the dictionary sync. This is going to be going and finding any extraneous codes, any codes that are not in the right list. So this right here is the correct list, and these are any codes that don't match that list. So your old code, and then you would choose the new code that you want to change it to. If you have multiple in this list, just to make it easier on you, you can always come up to the default code, mark it, whatever you want it to be, and then mark all of these as the default. Or if you just got one, you can come in and change this. So I'm going to choose other because that's the one that's most like it. So now this 99 miscellaneous code will be checked as inactive, and kind of like find and replace, it'll take anything that has this code and change it to other so that it is NIBRS compliant. So hit save. You can print a report to see what all you're changing, and then run update so that you can see the update is complete. All right, the next step will come over to setup again. And this is probably the biggest, most time-consuming one. It's really not that bad, but it is the most work that you'll probably have to do with the code setup, and that is going to be your crime and incident codes. So we'll jump in there, and in here, you would need to go through your crimes that are NIBRS reportable and choose the correct codes to go for those. So what if you don't know which codes are NIBRS reportable? Well, if you go to our support site right here, which is going to be end-to-end.freshdesk.com, you will have to log in using your ARMS admin login. If you don't have that, reach out to us and we can work with you to get that. But this will get you to all of our documentation in the site. So let's scroll down. We're going to go down to federal and state reporting, and we are going to choose NIBRS. So these are all the documentation, or all the documents that we have on NIBRS. First one I want to look at is the offense code list. If we go there, this is just a list of all of the NIBRS reportable crimes. So you can see it's just 2 pages, and these Group B ones are only reportable if there was an arrest for whatever that offense is. But if we come up here, let's see this aggravated assault. Aggravated assault needs a UCR offense code of 13A, and then a crime against of person. What that means is back in ARMS, we've got an aggravated assault right here. Let's click on that one. We need to make the UCR offense code 13A, just like it's listed here. So we've got that. And then down below, we need to put the crime against as person. So we'll come over here. This one is already all set up, so we've got that one good. So those are the only 2 fields you have to put in: UCR offense code and the UCR offense code and the crime against person. And then let's save. All right, so if you do, and you can also see we've got a lot of other aggravated assaults. If you're doing this in mobile, you can also come up to bulk edit and just select all of those, then click edit. And that way you can say, I want them all to be 13A, and I want them all to be crime against person. And save. Saves you some time going through that bulk edit so that you don't have to go one by one. And then also, if you have a crime code in your list that doesn't match one on this list, you can always come over to the FBI user manual, which you can find in this list, the NIBRS official FBI user manual. And on page 45, you've got an offense lookup table. This is going to have all of the offenses the FBI could come up with and matches it to the correct NIBRS offense code. One that we see a lot would be stalking. So if I could hit Control F and type stalking, that'll bring me down here. And you can see over here for the offense code, it's going to be 13C. So if I go back to this offense code list and find 13C, assault intimidation, so that works, and then crime against person. So then you would come to your crime codes and just set that up in here. All right. So the next one we are going to go through is going to be the location codes. So if we go to the geo file up here, we'll click on that. And then we will go to one of these locations. The only thing you have to do for this one is map the correct NIBRS address type. All the ones that pop up in this list are going to pull from that dictionary sync that we did before. So running that gets you all of these codes so you don't have to put that in manually. Then you can click on the 52 code right there, save that, and you're done. That's all you have to do for the locations. You do have to do it on every location, map it to the right kind, but after that, you are all good. All right, we'll go back to setup, and now most of the rest of them are all going to be right here in the code list. So let's click on that, and we'll go to our category of property and evidence, and then our subcategory of property type. So mine are already kind of set up to match NIBRS, but what you do in here is you would choose a certain code. So let's do bicycles 4. And you've got your description right here, the code right there, and then right here you translate it to the NIBRS property description. Like I said, mine already kind of match those, but you would be able to do that for any that don't match that specifically. This is made for if your officers are used to certain property codes, they can still put in those codes, but it'll import into NIBRS as the correct one. So say this one right here, laptop computers. Maybe that's what the officer normally puts in, but that's not a NIBRS property description. So we would choose from that list what matches it most. So we'll do computer hardware and software. And then hit save. Now whenever an officer puts in laptop computers, it'll import into NIBRS as computer hardware software. All right. And then also on there, you've got drugs, narcotic equipment right here. You'll want to make sure that those are mapped correctly as well. You've got the mapping for NIBRS right here, and you also want to map it for this base property type too. That will make sure that since there are more fields that you have to fill out for drugs, narcotics, this will make sure that that happens whenever an officer puts in drugs, narcotics for the piece of property. Same thing with firearms too, or any type of weapon. All right, so our next one, we're going to come up to the top, and these are all going to be pretty small ones. They take maybe a minute to set up. You would go to category right here, go to master name, and then subcategory is going to be name type. Here's one, and you don't have to do this, but some departments will. If you're a school or college or university, yes, this is probably a little bit easier for you because a lot of them set up non-resident and resident student because for NIBRS, you do have to mark if that person is a resident or non-resident or unknown. So right here, you can actually map these where you've got student non-resident, map it to NIBRS for non-resident. And then vice versa, student resident, mark it as resident. Again, you don't have to set this up. Instead, if you don't set it up, then whenever you're doing your NIBRS review for the victim or the arrestee, you do just have to put the resident status of them. All right, and so for our next one, we're going to stay in master name for category, and then we're going to go to contact involvement. All right, and in here, there's going to be two main ones that you want to look at. It's going to be or maybe not two main ones, but two main things you want to look for. Someone who is going to be imported as an offender into the NIBRS review, or an involvement type that would import as a victim. So for victim right here, we would click on that, and you can see you've got two things here you want to fill out. Report writer involvement type mapping, which would be victim, and then the NIBRS import, which will be import as victim. Again, any other codes that you might use for victim or that an officer might use, you want to do that same thing. And then above that, you've got arrested person and suspect. Those would both be the offender. So you'd want to go in there, map it to arrestee and offender, and then same thing for suspect. Map to suspect and offender. You don't necessarily have to worry about reportee or witness right now, or most departments wouldn't, but you can mark that if you want to. All right, so we'll cancel out of that. Again, anything else that would fall under those two categories, you want to do that same thing with. You may have a different name other than arrested person or suspect, but you'll want to do that for your department too. All right, and the very last one that we need to go over, and this isn't a very, this isn't one that you have to do. We'll go into system defaults and go to arrest. So right here, this auto assign number will make it so that your booking number on the arrest automatically go in. If your department manually puts a booking number in, that is fine too. The main thing is that you want to always put in a booking number, because whenever that imports into the NIBRS review, they will have that as the transaction ID for that arrest. And if you don't put a booking number in whenever you put an arrest, then it'll just be blank, and you're going to have to put it in whenever you do your NIBRS review. If you don't, then we normally suggest putting a transaction ID of just the case number and then the number of the arrest. So if you have 2 arrests, you would have the case number -1, case number -2 for the 2 transaction IDs. But it's a lot easier if you just set up your booking number to auto assign. Okay, so that is it for the NIBRS code setup. Again, we went through this. Main one's going to be the crime code, and then the geo file locations, the properties in code list, the name types in code list, and the involvement type in code list. And then finally, the booking number in system defaults, automating that. And again, before all of that, we had the licensing for NIBRS and the dictionary sync in the system defaults. You can do this setup with or before being licensed for NIBRS. That licensing for NIBRS is really just going to make it to where you can actually report it. Without that, you can't report NIBRS, but you can do all of the setup beforehand if you'd like. Okay. All right. Other than that, we can go ahead and conclude this webinar meeting. We won't have a Q&A session this week because it was not recorded, but the questions that were covered there were mostly for specific state or specific department. So there's nothing that would apply to everyone. But if you do have any questions, please reach out. Go to support@arms.com or email support@arms.com and call at 1-800-776-6783. Or you can always go to arms.com or end-to-end.freshdesk.com if you have questions there. All right. Well, I hope everybody stays safe and has a great rest of your day. All right. Thanks, guys.